I am an expert on PMS because I was involved in a years-long clinical trial. In my own clinical trial, I wasn't getting any help from conventional medicine, and it was really disrupting my life. And black cohosh was one of the herbs that brought me back to myself. You know, when you have this visceral experience of being healed by a plant yourself, then you can become an advocate for its use in a way that you can't if you're just reading about it. The plants that I feel really passionate about are the ones that have come to my rescue. Black cohosh definitely was one of them.
Welcome to the Herbs with Rosalee podcast, a show exploring how herbs heal as medicine, as food, and through connecting with the living world around you. In this episode, I'm joined by Patricia Kyritsi Howell, herbalist, author, and longtime steward of Appalachian plants. Patricia shares her deep knowledge of black cohosh, a plant surrounded by both reverence and controversy. We talk about its traditional uses, the challenges of conservation, and what it means to be truly in relationship with a plant that's both powerful and vulnerable. This conversation is wise, grounded, and full of insights about caring for plants and people alike. If you enjoy this episode, please give it a thumbs up so more plant lovers can find us. And don't forget to stay tuned until the very end for your herbal tidbit. Patricia, welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi, Rosalee. Good to be here again.
So just as we're getting started, it's starting to rain here. And this is not big news where you live in the Appalachia, but where I live, this is big news because I live in the desert. And I just feel like I've just entered, like you have brought the moisture.
Oh.
I feel like, okay, I'm just going to pretend that I'm in an Appalachian forest right now.
Yeah, happy to moisten things up for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I've had you on the show before. We got to hear your herbal story. And I'm just wondering, what have you been up to since we've seen you last?
Well, I finished writing a book or redoing my book, which I know we will get to in a minute. And that was what I was working on for the last year and finished it in March. And then I immediately got on a plane and went to Greece for a month. Because I have a small tour company that I do these 8-day tours in Greece that are focused on herbs and food, basically. A little bit of hiking. People ask me, how much do you hike? I say just enough to justify how much we're eating. You know?
Perfect, yeah.
So that's really, a place that really restores me. So being there for a month was wonderful. And now I'm just kind of laying low for the summer. I would never say that I'm retired, but I closed my school officially completely at the end of last year and took down the website. And so that was a big chapter ending because I'd had the school here in Georgia for 30 years. It was kind of sad and also a huge relief.
Yeah, both. Yeah. And like you said, what a major new chapter to just, I don't know, imagine your calendar looks very different once the school closes.
Yeah, it does. And, and I know that you do a lot of teaching too. And there's something about, like, I would usually have between 26 and 30 students in my 10-month program. And so just kind of the whole process of holding space for a group of students for 10 months, it takes a lot of concentration and intention, really, to hold that together. And I loved it. And, I would not have changed a minute of it, but I'm also okay that it's not happening anymore.
Ready for a new chapter.
Yeah. I mean, I think as for me, as I get older, it's, I think when you're younger as an herbalist, and this was definitely true for me, I just wanted to know everything and do everything and, work with every plant and make every tincture, and it was like nothing was too much. And now, not that I wouldn't say I'm cynical or jaded about it, but I feel like, okay, I did that. I found out what I needed to find out, and I had that experience, and it's kind of nice to kind of let up on the gas pedal a little bit.
Yeah, and then go spend a month in Greece. I'd love to ask you some questions about that if you don't mind.
Sure.
Well, so I know you have family roots in Greece. In fact, your book was dedicated to your, I want to say grandfather. Yes, here we go.
My
And
grandfather.
is that the Greece side of things?
Yeah, that's my dad's side of the family. And just as a little side note, so my last name growing up, my whole life was Kyritsi. And when I went away to college, I just wanted to have a waspy name, because if you have a name like that, you have to spell it every single time, and everyone mispronounces it. And I know you have a name story as well, but so when I was getting ready to go, my mom's side of the family was Howell, and so my grandma Howell said, well, why don't you use Howell? Because, I would be proud to have you be a Howell, and everybody knows that name. So, this was back in the 70s when, you could just go into, I had a passport in that name. I never legally changed it. But it was so easy to just have a name that you didn't have to spell it. And then about 15 years ago, I realized that I would really have trouble proving who I was, because I had a birth certificate with one name and a passport and anyway. So I legally changed my name to that. So that's where that name comes from. And my grandparents emigrated from Greece in the early 1900s. And I still have, my grandfather was one of 12 children. So I have like 1 million cousins in Greece and some in the United States. But it's really a place that I love so much.
Do you have a favorite? You mentioned food and justifying just enough hiking to justify the food. Is there a favorite dish that you have, or a couple? I realize it might be hard to choose one.
Yeah, whatever's in front of me is usually the
all right.
There is one dish that people make there in the spring, and I always go to Greece in the spring because the plants all kind of die out as the weather gets hot, and then in the summer there's really nothing herbal to look at. And it's called Angenares alla Polita, and it means city-style artichokes. And it's artichoke hearts with new potatoes, young carrots, a lot of dill, and then kind of a lemon sauce that goes on it.
That's amazing.
And so it's like a very light summer stew almost, soup kind of on the edge of that. And I love artichokes, and dill. So that combination, and I did eat a lot of that when I was there.
Artichokes are my favorite vegetable, like hands down. Yeah, my absolute favorite, followed maybe by eggplant, and then possibly celery. But yeah, the artichokes are my favorite. We don't get really good artichokes where I live, and when I go to Europe just has much better artichokes. So I'm always trying to find them while I'm there.
Yeah, in the spring on Crete, you'll just be driving down the road and there'll be a guy parked on the side of the road with a pickup truck full of artichokes and a little scale and some bags, and you just pull over. And when I tell my friends and family there that an artichoke here can cost $4 or $5, just one, the big globe artichokes, they're just like, they don't believe me.
Okay, it's $7 at my local store for an artichoke, and it looks like crap. So I can't even it's my favorite vegetable. So I would justify it if it looked good, but it just doesn't. So I'm like, I can't pay $7 for a crappy artichoke. It would just.
You need to come with me to Crete because we can gorge ourselves on artichokes.
That's becoming very clear to me right now.
Looks like you have Greek tendencies.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been in Greece. You've been hanging out. The school closed, and the book, and the book is just absolutely beautiful. We're going to dive into it. But before we get there, I would love to talk about your chosen plant, which I will admit was highly suggested by me, which is black cohosh.
When you were twisting my arm and saying, whatever you want to talk about, as long as it's black cohosh.
Pretty much.
It doesn't take much encouragement because I do love the plant myself. So.
Yeah. So I often say, why did you choose black cohosh? But yeah, you didn't really. I did. So let's talk about why you love black cohosh and
why
did you agree?
I agree. Well, when I first came to the Southern Appalachians, which was in the 80s. And that was way back when I was a sound engineer and I worked in the music business, and I came here to do an event. And I knew about herbs at the time, but I didn't think of myself as an herbalist, just sort of an enthusiast. And I remember hiking and stopping on a trail and looking up the hill and seeing, all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, there are hundreds of black cohosh plants on this hillside.
Wow.
And it just took my breath away, because I had gone to school at the California School of Herbal Studies. So very different climate. And I think we had like 3 black cohosh that sort of struggled because it didn't get that cold, and it does like cold weather. And just to see it so abundantly was thrilling. And that's when you're an herbalist, when you see a plant in the wild and you kind of, there it is, So over the years, I know it so intimately because it grows all around me where I live, here in the Southern Appalachians. And it's just a lush, beautiful plant. It's blooming right now. It's kind of at the end of its blooming time. And one of the things I write about in the book is that one of the common names for it is fairy torches. And when you see it in a deep forest where there's such a large tree canopy that everything is in shade, it does look like something being illuminated from the base up, because you're in this dark green environment, and then way back there you see these white plumes in the dark, and they do really look magical in that setting. So it's also a plant. One of the other things I really like about it, besides its use, its application as a medicinal plant, is it's something that you can really harvest sustainably because it's the root that we're using, the rhizome and the rootlets, but it grows, with an underground root. So when you dig it up, there will be a stalk that is the growth to this year's plant. But then right next to that in the rhizome is the bud for the following year's growth. So when you collect it, if you cut the first couple inches off the rhizome and replant it, it will regenerate the next year. It might not flower, might take a couple years still for it to flower. But there are places here, I have access to some private land where I can take my students for harvesting. And we've been harvesting, I've been here over 25 years and going back to the same places with my students over the years. And there's even more now as a result of us harvesting it and replanting it. So, we always have that conservation concern with medicinal plants. But with black cohosh, for personal use. Now, I know that I talk to people in North Carolina, like Janine Davis at the University of North Carolina, who's done a lot of work on woodland medicinals. And it's still being harvested quite a bit in the wild for the commercial market. And I think it's on the watch or the endangered list for UPS. I forget which category it's in. But regionally, it's very abundant. But, like I tell my students, and I write about this in the book, it's like, if you're doing commercial products, that you're selling, then you need to work with a grower. If you're harvesting 4 roots for yourself, I think that's an appropriate wildcrafting use of the plant. But I think it's when people are doing so much and then they're making product and sell it. For me, that sort of flips to a different category at that point.
Well, and if those sustainable harvesting methods that you described aren't being used, that's kind of ultimately the problem there. If it's not done in a regenerative manner. Yeah. Well, I love the fairy torches. I can only imagine. I've never been to Southern Appalachia. I've never seen black cohosh growing in its native habitat before. I do grow it myself and love it for that. But yeah, I can just imagine that growing in a darker forest and those light torches coming up. That's beautiful. Yeah, it's an easy plant to fall in love with simply because of how beautiful black cohosh is. And I've always found its medicinal applications to be interesting because it's kind of really well known for a couple of things that I don't know, seem like they don't necessarily go together in some ways. I don't know, but I'll let you talk about it, just how we might work with this plant.
Well, I mean, this plant is a really good example of something that I always talk about, which is botanical disjunction. Are you familiar with that term?
No, I'm not.
So this has to do with, now we're getting into talking about major geographical earth changes over millions of years. And so when those numbers start up, I can't go with them, but a long, long time ago, let me preface it that way, there was a plant community that extended from Eastern North America over land bridges into what's now northern China. So for that reason, excuse me, a lot of our plants here are also found growing in China. When the glaciers came down, they scraped away a lot of the plant life, but there were some pockets where the mountains were so big that the glaciers stopped, and Southern Appalachia is one of those places. There's also a couple places in the Ozarks and then northern China where those plant populations survived glaciation. And then after the glaciers receded, they expanded again. So when I was studying herbs to begin with, more of a Western approach at the California school, and we talked about herbs like black cohosh, we were really looking at them more from what the eclectics said about black cohosh and what they learned from indigenous people in North America. And that's mostly has to do with the female generative system. So using it as a preparator for labor, for menstrual cramps, things like a little bit of rheumatism, things like that. But in the 70s, when Nixon went to China and we began to have cultural exchange with China, and that's the point when acupuncturists and acupuncture just in general became known to us here in the United States. One of the things that all the hippie herbalists realized, of which I was one, still am. Well, my sister said, I have a sister who's very much younger than me, and she said, you never have to say old hippies, because if you say hippies, it's implied. It was a while ago. Anyway, one of the things that we realized at that point is that what was being used in traditional Chinese medicine, herbally, were the same plants that the Cherokee and other indigenous people had used in North America. And so when I finished herb school, where I studied with, David Hoffman and Amanda Crawford, and it was very much a body systems approach, with some energetics. And I practiced for a few years. I felt really frustrated by the mechanistic aspects of it. Now, if I had maybe done a deep dive into more of the eclectic approach to herbalism, I wouldn't have felt that limitation. But I kept seeing patterns with my clients of different emotional states, different personality types associated with specific health issues. And so I just couldn't figure out a way to put those two pieces together based on my training. And it was around that time that I met Althea Northridge-Orr, who's an acupuncturist, herbalist, genius who practices in Chicago. And when I met her, we started talking, as herbalists do, about herbs. And what we realized is that she knew all the plants if they were in a jar with a label, and I knew them all if they were in a garden. But if a person sat in front of me, I really struggled to put the plants with the person. And she wanted to know more about the plants. Anyway, being entrepreneurs, that's how we started our school in Chicago for herbal medicine in 1991. And basically, we were doing it so that we could learn from each other and let our students pay us to do that. But don't tell anyone.
It's just between you and me.
Yeah. But when I, kind of studied with Althea and learned from her as my mentor, I began to learn how in traditional Chinese medicine, a lot of the herbs were used that I was already using. And one of them was black cohosh. So the indigenous use of the plant had a lot to do with the female generative system and rheumatic pain, joint pain. But in TCM, it was also used as a bronchial antispasmodic, and it was also used to push pathogens out of the body at the early stages of a pathogenic invasion. So in TCM, they would call that something like a surface releasing herb. So where we might think of taking echinacea, something that stimulates the immune response, in that paradigm, the idea is to get all the pores of the skin to open up and let everything get flushed out, because the surface immune system is battling at that point to keep things out. And so black cohosh is one of the herbs that they use. And it doesn't necessarily prevent someone from getting sick, but it usually tends to increase the pace at which an illness goes through all the stages. So whereas somebody might get a cold and be sick for 2 weeks, when you're using these more diaphoretic surface releasing herbs, everything happens condensed. So you have a couple days of feeling like I'm getting sick, and then you have a day or two of feeling really bad, and then you have a little lingering cough, and then it's over. So black cohosh is one of the plants that is used in that way in TCM. But also, because of what I learned, I started including it in my cough syrup formulas and found it was really, really effective, because ultimately it's an antispasmodic for tubular parts of the body. So that would be the uterus, in general, and the bronchioles. And then it has a lot of calming qualities as well. And in traditional Chinese medicine, we work with the 5-phase theory, that there's relationship between different organs, and it's kind of a way of talking about how energy moves. And what I observed, and I'm not saying that I'm the only person who thinks this, but what I observed is that the wood element, which is governs the function of the liver, has a tendency to get overextended. It gets, and that's when women experience things like premenstrual syndrome. It's a case of liver excess. The liver is really ungrounded. You can't sleep. You can't think. You can't digest properly. You feel really, really ungrounded. And the element that comes before wood is water. And so what I observed is that what black cohosh does, when we talk about it in the context of hormonal imbalances, is that what it does is it really grounds the wood element and the liver in the cooling, grounding aspects of the water element. And so it helps when someone is a wood excess type, or when someone has severe PMS, it's like they usually feel really irritated, and they have trouble accepting nurturing and what do I want to say besides nurturing, help in general. They're just kind of flailing around. I am an expert on PMS because I was involved in a years-long clinical trial, in my own clinical trial of having severe PMS. And it is one of the things that was a catalyst for me to know about herbs, is because I wasn't getting any help from conventional medicine, and it was really disrupting my life. And black cohosh was one of the herbs that kind of brought me back to myself. So instead of, one of my friends calls it being in your 9th chakra or 10th chakra, you're like so up here that you're not in your body anymore. And that's how I always felt. And I noticed that black cohosh kind of, and it's a root herb, so it kind of makes sense that it put me back here, where I was like, okay, I can think clearly now. So in my clinical practice, I often use actually black cohosh combined with motherwort as one of my primary acute formulas for menopausal insomnia, anxiety, brain fog, and also for premenstrual issues. And then, because it's antispasmodic, it also helps with cramping and things like that. So when you have this visceral experience of being healed by a plant yourself, then you can become an advocate for its use in a way that you can't if you're just reading about it.
Yeah.
Right. If I tell you this is what this plant does, but you've never had it happen for you, it stays a little abstract. And the plants that I feel really passionate about are the ones that have come to my rescue. Black cohosh definitely was one of them.
I think it's like if you're introducing someone, it's very different to like introduce your best friend versus introduce someone like, you met last week, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've heard about them, but
yeah,
exactly. So I have a lot of affection for the plant. And it's also, like you said, it's just one of the most beautiful plants. And it's interesting too, that in its native habitat, the plant almost always grows with blue cohosh. All the places that black cohosh grows here in abundance, there's an equal amount of blue cohosh there too. And then that brings up, that age-old question of us, how did people know, to take these two plants, both, with the common name cohosh and combine them for this very specific purpose? I think that's, something that I just sit around and think about a lot. Like, how do we know this? Where did this come from?
Yeah. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but those two are not botanically related. Is that right?
No.
Right.
I mean, how they're related is they grow in the same plant community, really. That's it.
Yeah.
And the roots look different. The foliage is different, everything about them. But they're both understory plant. They're both like on the forest floor, 2 or 3 feet tall, and bloom at different times. Everything about them is different other than that.
And you said that those two are combined a lot. Will you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really common, not used so much anymore, but it was a really common herbal formula, 50-50 of each of those to give to women during the last 3 weeks of pregnancy as a uterine tonic, and then also in higher frequent doses to promote labor. Because when those two herbs are combined, what they do is they're responsible for there being rhythmic uterine contractions. So the two of the things that can really be dangerous in childbirth is stalled labor, and then if the uterus is spasming and contracting too rapidly to be productive. So black and blue cohosh together were used traditionally for that purpose. Now, in the last, I don't know, maybe 15 or 18 years, I think, there have been reports of babies being born with congestive heart issues, and there is some suspicion that it's related to blue cohosh use at the end of pregnancy. So a lot of the midwives that I know now use black and blue cohosh as homeopathics during the last 3 weeks to avoid the potential that there's something in blue cohosh that's doing that. I don't know if any, really specific studies or clinical, information is being gathered, because, one of the problems, of course, that we have in the United States is that herbalism is not considered scientific. There's not a lot of research going on about the therapeutic actions of herbs in this country. Most of it's happening somewhere else. So I don't know if anything has been done further. I haven't really followed it.
Do you happen to know the etymology of cohosh? I'm just wondering now.
No, I don't. And I've heard, different stories, that, it was the Creek, it was the Cherokee, it was the Menominee, it was the Ojibwa, I don't know who used those names.
I see.
But yeah, and then they had the same names because they were combined so frequently to get the
I see.
Cohosh.
Hey, it's Rosalee. You know, creating this podcast has been one of the most rewarding parts of my herbal work. And if you've found something meaningful here, whether it's a new perspective, a favorite recipe, or just a sense of calm, I want to let you know there's a good way to go even deeper. It's called the Podcast Circle. Inside, you'll get access to live classes taught by some of my favorite herbal teachers, behind-the-scenes updates, and a beautiful library of herbal resources that we've gathered over the years. But more than that, it's a space to connect with fellow plant lovers who care about the same things you do. And truly, your membership helps make this podcast possible. It's how we keep the episodes coming and the herbal goodness flowing. So if you're ready to be part of something more, something rooted in connection, head over to herbalpodcastcircle.com. I'd love to see you there. Black cohosh is also often used to support people through perimenopause and menopause as well. I know you speak to that in your book. I'm wondering if you could mention that a little bit as well.
Well, I mean, first of all, you know, there is some, and we know how dangerous information is on the internet, but it is sometimes talked about as being something that has hormonal properties, which it does not. I believe that what black cohosh does is it regulates, not in a hepatic way, but it has some sort of impact on the liver and the way the liver goes out of balance in terms of its effect on the nervous system. And so black cohosh helps with a lot of what a lot of women experience in menopause, which is brain fog, problems with memory, trouble getting good quality sleep. Not so much hot flashes, I don't think, but that just sort of ungrounded, again, you know, that's really kind of the theme, I think, of that. So I know that a lot of the women that I worked with over the years had really good results using black cohosh as a sleep remedy and taking it throughout the day, along with some other things that we already know really help with cognitive function, like bacopa, for example, or go to cola, you know, to kind of just sharpen the pencil is how I think of it.
It's a nice way to think about that. When you're working with black cohosh, are you often working with it as a tincture, or will you do a decoction as well?
You know, I pretty much used it as a tincture or a capsule, not because it has a horrible flavor or anything, but you know, there were people who I worked with in my practice who wanted to get in there and roll their sleeves up and mess around with herbs. And then I seem to have a greater number of people who wanted convenience. And that was part of what helped them comply with the protocols I gave them. So occasionally, yeah, black cohosh as a decoction, because that would be how we would prepare it as a water extract. But I used to make a lot of it into tincture and used it primarily that way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, this is from your book here, Black Cohosh. You have a whole chapter on black cohosh, which you've also shared with us. So folks can download the sample chapter from your new book by going to herbswithrosaleepodcast.com or checking out the show notes. Yeah, in this, so you have 44 herbs in this book, is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so they all have a similar structure. We're looking at the names, we're looking at a botanical description, habitats, we're looking at medicinal aspects, preparations, and then parts about harvesting too. And the photos in this are just so stunning. And if you can tell, it's a good sized book as well. So you get a really good look at the photos. And I've been looking at this book, looking at all, so many different plants within here. And so it didn't take me very long to go to the back of the book to see who's taking these gorgeous photos. And as a semi-amateur photographer myself, I wanted to know. And it was really cool to see you have the bulk of the photos on here, and as well as, folks here and there as well. But yeah, it's absolutely lovely. I mean, I love a stunning book, and this is an absolutely stunning book. There's lobelia.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of your herb audience, when I look at my phone, at the pictures in my phone, it's plants, 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 flowers, plants, plants,
Ah,
plants. So when I was getting ready to, because I had published this book originally in 2006 without photographs, because at that time doing self-publishing with photographs, what was really hard to do, it really wasn't something that was readily available. And so I had this dream of someday my dream book would have these big pictures in it. So I think I was taking pictures in anticipation for 20 years,
no.
for these things. So when I sat down to see, like, okay, what pictures do I need? And then looked at my pictures that I had on my computer, I was actually very surprised how many I had. And I really, tried to, one thing that I think is can be frustrating if you're trying to identify plants in the wild and you have a field guide, is that they're only pictures of plants in flower. So if it's not flowering, it's a little tricky to see, like, what is this, in August, as opposed to in the spring. So one thing I really wanted to do was have an herbalist approach to the photographs and show things in the fall, show things early in the spring, show them as their flowers were blooming and fading, and try to do that, lifespan of the plant, as opposed to when it was, all smiling for the camera kind of thing.
Here's the smiling passion flower,
Yeah.
maypop,
Yeah.
passiflora, incarnata. So we have the beautiful aspect, and then you turn the page, we've got the fruits, we've got the leaf. So yeah, like you're saying, you got it all. You got the pretties and the functional.
Yeah. I wanted it to be useful for people who are just getting used to what those plants look like. Definitely.
When I saw this, I was surprised. I didn't realize you all had Pipsissewa down there. It
Is
grows
that
here
something
too.
do you have it here? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's pretty common here. In fact, the pictures that are in there of the Pipsissewa I took last spring while I was working on the book. And there's a place that I walk at a state park near my house. And when it was in bloom, the plant is only, this tall, for any of you listening who don't know it. And so I had to, like, lay down on my stomach and thing. And people were walking by on the trail like, are you okay? As I was, like, trying to get a really good close up of it.
This is normal in the herbal world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks twice about it. And not to, I'll just jump in and say, one of the things also that I put in the book that I think is especially helpful is a bloom and harvest chart at the back.
I saw that. Yeah.
That, it's kind of geared towards this region. So I don't know, like, when Pipsissewa blooms for you. For us, it's pretty early on in the spring. But I wanted to kind of give people sort of a range of when to look for those plants, if you were going to harvest them.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that the black cohosh is at the end of flowering right now, which we're recording this at the beginning of August, and that's the same for my garden. It's towards the end of flowering right now. So that was interesting to me because we live in very different climates. One thing I want to say, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and like most of the roots, we wait till the foliage is starting to almost die back in the fall. And actually, I sometimes, now I know where it's always growing, but when I was harvesting it in different places, I would put yarn around it, so that when there was a hard frost and it got knocked down, the foliage got killed by the frost, I could still harvest the roots. Because the later you wait, the better, because more of the potency of the plant is now in the root.
Yeah, that's clever.
Yeah.
One thing I really want to say about this book is it's Medicinal Plants of the Southern Appalachians, which someone might immediately think, oh, well, I don't live in Southern Appalachia. The plants in this book are the plants that we work with. There's very few that are super specific. But, there's boneset, black walnut, black haw, evening primrose, gentian, goldenrod, jewelreed. I mean, there's just so many in here that like I'm saying, grow where I live as well. So I love that aspect about it. It's, very, the photos, the feel of it, very Southern Appalachia. And I think folks all over can really appreciate it. If you want to learn about herbs from a variety of different habitats and everything, this is going to be a fabulous book for that. Solomon seal, just saw that one.
Yeah, I just actually, one of my semi-retired herbalist habits now, or pastimes, is drawing plants, and doing botanical drawings. And I just finished downstairs a Solomon seal that I was really happy with.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask you a couple of questions about self-publishing. So this book is self-published, like your first one. And what does that look like? Like what, yeah, even just like your process, because I think it's interesting to know how much goes into a book. I know you wrote the original years ago. You spent at least a year, if not more, right, updating it.
Yeah, I mean, so the original book is, I thought I had some copies of it right here, was basically the handouts from the courses I taught, at my school, the Botanologo school here. And, the longer you work with plants, the more you know about them. So actually, when I went back and looked at the first edition in preparation for redoing it, it was kind of a humbling experience, because what I thought I knew about the plants in 2005 and what I know in 2025 and 2024 was, there's no comparison. So my ego took a big hit, thinking about people having read that first version, that I had so much more I could add to it. I'm really a big advocate for self-publishing. If you have the energy to do the work, to do the self-publishing. I feel, and you've written a lot of books and had them published, right? I think you've gone with a publisher for most of your books.
I just self-published this year, though, so I've had both experiences now.
Oh, you did? Okay. What book was that you just published?
It's a bioregional coloring book, which is a little bit different of a thing. But, because it was so bioregional, it just kind of made sense to, work with local folks to get it out there.
Sure. First of all, you have to be very self-disciplined to keep working on it. That's the hardest thing, I think. But when I wrote the first version of the book back in the early 2000s, the University of Georgia heard about it, and I teach down there sometimes, or I did at that point. And they said, when your manuscript is done, we'd like to have first rights for it. And so when I finished it, I sent them the manuscript, and they got kind of cold feet because they wanted scientific citations for all the uses of the plants. And I tried to explain to them that there weren't for many of them, because they're just, plants that have been used traditionally or in folk medicine, but not anything really double-blind studies or anything that they would find legitimate. But they were very nervous about it, and they came up with this kind of crazy suggestion that I find somebody who had a PhD who would sign on as my co-author, that would give it more academic credentials. And I said, can I have that back?
Yeah, I can tell you love that idea.
And so I kind of pouted for about 6 months and was really discouraged. And then I took a seminar with somebody about self-publishing. And it was a man named Tom Bird, who's out of Arizona, who was teaching at Emory University in Atlanta. And I showed him the manuscript, and he was like, don't ever give this to a publisher, because you have a public platform. And I think that is one of the things about self-publishing. If you have some sort of public persona, you teach, or, you're known in some way, that it makes sense to self-publish because you have something, to help you with promoting it and selling it, and you're already considered sort of an authority on that topic. If you're a bank teller and you write a book about herbs, probably better to go with a publisher, because they're going to promote it for you and do all that. So he really inspired me, and that's what I used what I learned from him to do the first book, but I really just didn't have the money to do it the way I wanted to as a self-publishing thing. And then during COVID, like many people, I was like, if I live through this, what am I going to do? Like what are my life priorities? Because we all thought we were going to die. I think, at least I did. I was like, I ate whatever I wanted. I was like, this is the end here. But what on my list was redo the book with photographs. I want that. I want to make that contribution to herbalism, that I took all of what I've learned in the last, 30 years here in the Southern Appalachians and put it in some way that where after I'm gone, or if I don't want to teach anymore, people have access to it. So I also think that, so I wanted the complete control over content. I wanted to be able to make really specific recommendations for uses and dosage and things like that. But, it's a hassle. You have to get an ISBN number. You have to get a Library of Congress number. With the new book, with both books, I hired a book designer, but the book designer that I hired to do this book was very experienced and expensive, but she was an artist, and so I felt like she took my vision and brought it to life. And we got very close. We collaborated. Barbara Landy is her name. She lives in the Bay Area, and so I was really fortunate. But I also had to invest in the book. And, that isn't always what people can do. And the way that I learned how to do self-publishing was using a specific printing company that is owned by Ingram. That is the major distributor of books to bookstores in North America and throughout the world, really. They do book distribution everywhere. And because the printing company that I use is owned by them, as soon as I uploaded the PDF of the book to their website to have it printed, it automatically was in the Ingram database so that someone can go into any bookstore and order the book. And they also automatically put it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the places that they promote their catalog. So I have other friends who've self-published who had to get it on all those places themselves. They had to get it on Amazon. They had to get it on Barnes and Noble. Or they have a lot of them in their basement and they're shipping them themselves. So I don't have that. Anybody can go order the book and have it shipped to them. And I can order the books wholesale and take them when I do speaking engagements. And I had a lot of help. I had a couple colleagues who did technical editing for me, which, you really need somebody who's got an herbal background to look at what you're saying and make sure that you don't start talking about roots and then switch to leaves halfway through the recipe or something like that. So editors are worth their weight in gold, as you know. So for me, I'm a project person. I like a project. So I was challenged by it and I like doing it. But I think all my friends got really sick of hearing me say I can't go because I'm working on my book. And like that it was never going to be done, because pretty much all of 2024 and through March of this year, that's all I was doing. So it was a luxury that I was at a point in my career when I could step away from teaching and just devote myself to putting the book together. And I really wanted my book to be only plants that are native to the region. So there are some other books about medicinal plants of the Southeast in general, but they have like plantain and dandelion and chickweed. And I was a purist. I wanted it to be like what was here 300 years ago, and only those plants. So.
Well, again, it's absolutely stunning. And I was going to ask, what is the best way for folks to find the book? And so you're just recommending wherever folks like to buy books. Go in.
Yeah, wherever they like to buy books. Yeah, I mean, I do sell it through my website.
Will you share your website with us?
Yeah, it's my name.
All right. Well, Patricia Kyritsi Howell.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be sure to put that in the show notes. Oh, wild ginger too. I just think of that as a redwoods plant.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these plants, I know I have a friend who lives in Arizona. Oh, no, not, who was it that, Phyllis Hogan, who lives in there. I think she's Arizona, isn't she?
She is, yeah.
And she said she has black cohosh growing all around her. Which shocked me because I didn't think that our plants went out that far west.
Yeah, that is surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just interviewed Phyllis Light, and she said that American ginseng, grows in 39 states. I had no idea. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I need to get out more. Well, before you go, first, is there anything else you'd like to share about projects you're working on? It feels like the book has been pretty all-encompassing and has taken up a lot of your focus.
Yeah, I'm still kind of recovering from that. I'm still taking groups to Greece. I have a little tour company, so I have people going to Greece. I'm doing a lot of botanical drawing. Kat Meyer and I have a course that we teach called Crafting Your Herbal Practice, because one of the things I think of as I sort of, have accumulated years of experience as an herbalist is wanting to help other young herbalists who've invested a lot of money in their herbal education, and now they want to help people and they're really passionate about it, but maybe they don't have any kind of entrepreneurial skills or don't really have the lay of the land of what's required to really do a practice in a way that doesn't burn them out and doesn't come across as chaotic to their clients. Once you sort of take the position of putting yourself out there as a practitioner who's working with people and establishing that therapeutic relationship, there's a whole array of things that are involved with making that safe for them and for you. So a lot of the work that I've done in combination with everything else has been mentoring people. But then a few years back, Kat and I got in, had this conversation of like, why don't we combine what we've both learned and package it in a way that helps people not have to do what we did, which is recreate the wheel. So that is another project that I have that's a virtual course. And it's great because I can do it right here.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I've talked to several people who've gone through that and found it just extremely helpful and getting, kind of like you're saying, bridging that gap between school and practice. And so and I love the collaboration and reminds me of your story of like working with Actaea, working with Kat. Like it's just a beautiful thing when minds come together and support each other in complementary ways.
Yeah, and we have Emily Ruff is one of our guest teachers, and Camille Freeman and Mimi Hernandez, who are all have quite a lot. Lineup. Huh? Yeah, quite a lineup. Yeah. So I just really we need more herbalists. And that's kind of my motivating factor right now. Is like I don't want people who are passionate about herbalism to either make a misstep in their practice that damages their reputation because they didn't keep confidentiality or they didn't know what to do if somebody had a bad reaction to an herb. There's a lot of things like that I think slip through the cracks of most herbal trainings. I know for me, when I trained extensively at the California school, it was great program, great teachers, but I didn't really understand how to have good boundaries as a practitioner or how to do pricing. I think a lot of herbalists too feel guilty about charging for their services. And as a result, they're poverty stricken or they never have a successful herbal practice as a result. So I like to encourage them to take themselves seriously, because if they have a solid financial foundation for their practice, then they can do things like mutual aid and sliding scale and free consultations. But I don't think you can start out doing that if you want to have a place to live and something to eat.
Yeah, that's exactly what I say. Don't start there.
Yeah.
Get your feet under you first, and then the rest will come.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this, sharing your project, sharing your book, sharing about Black Cohosh. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad you're back here on the show. It's always a pleasure to get caught up. But before you go, I'd love to ask you one last question.
All right.
And that's, how do herbs instill hope in you?
Well, it's a heavy lifting these days, but I think the way herbs instill hope in me at this point is that their ability to calm us down and allow us to think clearly and assess things clearly. And I think that a lot of people in my community and a lot of my friends are really struggling with anxiety and feeling hopeless and depressed these days. And I do think there are herbs like mimosa and rose and motherwort, that hawthorn, that really help the heart and keep people from feeling disempowered at this time. So I also think that, as healthcare challenges and access to healthcare seems to be changing, and people maybe can't do as much with insurance and things like that, or Medicaid, or whatever they use to rely on, that as herbalists, we're right there to help them see that doesn't mean that they don't have any support, or there's nothing they can do if they can't go to a conventional medical doctor. So that gives me great hope. And even though I'm not technically practicing anymore, as you know, I'm sure, and a lot of the people listening to your podcast know that once you tell someone that you're studying herbs or you know anything about herbs, you start getting questions. So I still get emails and phone calls and people stopping by asking for help. And that's where I'm encouraging them to do things like make nervine tonics part of what they do every day, so that they don't get so freaked out that they're immobilized and they can't take action to support the freedoms that are in danger right now.
That's beautiful. It's just turning to the plants for support, for empowerment and groundedness. Yeah. Things we desperately need, as you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rosalee, it's always an honor to be on your podcast. And I'm a great fan of yours and the work you do and how much information you make available out there. So thanks for including me.
Oh, absolutely. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening. You can download your Black Cohosh monograph by heading to herbswithrosaleepodcast.com, or just check out the show notes for a link. And if you're not already subscribed, I'd love to have you a part of this herbal community so I can deliver even more herbal goodies your way. This podcast is made possible in part by our awesome students. This week's student spotlight is on Kate Vitale in Wisconsin. Kate has taken nearly every course we offer, from Rooted Medicine Circle and the Herbal Energetics course to Cooling Inflammation and more. She has been an active, encouraging presence in them all. She asks really thoughtful questions. She shares her discoveries in real time. And something I love, she always takes the time to cheer on her classmates. In her reflections, Kate described how her sit spot, a creaking swing overlooking the river, has become her place of solitude and inspiration. She also shared about her deep connection with her plant ally, calendula, saying she played with it, loved on it, talked to it, and harvested galore. Her enthusiasm for learning and her generous spirit brighten every space she's a part of. To honor her contributions, Mountain Rose Herbs is sending Kate a $50 gift certificate to stock up on their incredible selection of organically and sustainably sourced herbal supplies. Thank you so much to Mountain Rose Herb for supporting our amazing students. And if you'd like to be an herbalist, you can explore my foundational courses at herbswithrosalee.com. Okay, you've made it to the very end of the show, which means you get your very own gold star and this herbal tidbit. So I have a little black cohosh story to share. So a few years ago, many years ago now actually, I planted some black cohosh right outside my front steps, thinking it was the perfect spot because it was close to a water spigot, so I could keep it extra hydrated in my dry climate. And I imagined those tall, flowering fairy wands of flowers just greeting me every time I came and went. Well, what I didn't realize is that black cohosh flowers smell like death and decay. So for weeks when it first started flowering, I kept catching this awful odor, and I just thought, I really thought something was rotting nearby. But eventually I figured it out. It was the lovely black cohosh. So while I still admire its beauty, I've learned it might not be the most welcoming plant to keep right by the front door. As always, thanks for joining us. I'll see you in the next episode.